So welcome everybody to Epilepsy Awareness Day at Disneyland. If this is your first room that you've stopped in, it's a wonderful event. We appreciate everybody taking time to join us for basically the largest event supporting patients, families, and caregivers with epilepsy and seizures. Today, our host and guest speaker is Jeff Crowther. Hello, Jeff. Jeff is the VP of Sales and Marketing at SKLSI. Jeff has been with the company for a little over 3.5 years. They initiated their entrance into North America and the United States. And Jeff was actually the third hire here in the US on the commercial team for SKLSI. Interestingly enough, Jeff and I have circled back together after 20 years. Jeff and I worked together, little not known but interesting fact, we worked 20 years together at Johnson & Johnson with Topamax. So we both are very committed to the epilepsy community. And probably most importantly, Jeff is continually stressing the need for all of us at SK to prioritize patients every single day in every single thing we do. And that's why we are thrilled to be here to support the epilepsy community. And he actually doesn't even refer to our group as sales reps or account managers. Basically reminds us every chance that he gets that we are epilepsy patient advocates. So welcome, Jeff. We appreciate you being here and looking forward to what you have to say today.
Thanks so much, Trish. I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, I guess it has been 20 years or so since we got started at J&J, but it's obviously great to be back with you and here at SK LifeScience, and obviously a real exciting time for our company. So first and foremost, what I'd say is we are humbled as a company to be here. When you talk about patients and families and caregivers and epilepsy, we definitely have a passion for doing our part at SK LifeScience. And so what I want to go ahead and do is take 20, 30 minutes or so and provide an update on exactly who SK LifeScience is and a little bit about our recently approved product, XCOPRI, which is indicated for partial onset seizures in patients 18 years of age and older. So we'll go ahead and start. I'm briefly going to provide an overview of SK LifeScience, but then really focus in a little bit more on the product. This is YKP3089 for folks who participated in trials, cenobamate. The actual brand name is XCOPRI. So let's get started with SK LifeScience. Because it's probably not a company that many of you had heard of going back a couple of years. The interesting thing is we refer to it when we started to introduce the company here in the United States as probably one of the largest companies you may never have heard of. And this slide really represents the breakdown of SK Group as a company in Korea. It's a company that, although we've been in drug development since 1993, it's really a huge conglomerate in South Korea. I'm sure you've heard of Samsung. I'm sure you've heard of Hyundai. And maybe until this presentation, you haven't heard of SK LifeScience, but it's a company that was founded back in 1953 after the Korean conflict. And it's a massive company when you go ahead and take a look at it, with over 80,000 worldwide employees and 1,500 here in the United States. So that's, when you think of Korea, there's a bunch of these holding companies, these massive conglomerates, and SK is one of those, just like Hyundai and just like Samsung, as clear examples that you'd be familiar with here in the United States. In terms of, so as we in the United States are now focused on healthcare, we're a company, we're a subsidiary. SK LifeScience is a subsidiary of SK Biopharmaceuticals, and it's a company that is exclusively focused on CNS, on the central nervous system. What you have here, and this is something that could be found on our website, and I'll go ahead and provide those towards the end of the presentation, you get to see a CNS pipeline where we are very focused. The first couple of things listed here are, you'll find cenobamate, again, YKP3089. This is XCOPRI. This is the product that was recently approved for partial onset seizures in adult patients. We're also continuing to study XCOPRI currently in primary generalized tonic-clonic seizures. The company, though, is not exclusively focused in epilepsy. Solriamfetol is a product that came out of the SK labs. We actually licensed this product out to Jazz Pharmaceuticals for excessive daytime sleepiness. And then you get to see other compounds, again, that do focus back in towards epilepsy. And the reason we're here today is obviously epilepsy. Charisbamate is something that's being studied in Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And then you see our follow-on compound to cenobamate early in phase 1 currently, but that's 24741, the last product that's actually listed here. So in terms of the company itself, kind of what makes us tick, so to speak, in terms of vision, this is a company of very passionate scientists and now commercial associates that really want to make an impact, take on the complex mysteries of the brain from a central nervous system perspective. And why are we doing that? We want to make life better. We recognize that there are so many neurological disorders out there, and we have this expertise in drug development related to CNS, with epilepsy kind of leading the way. Let's go ahead as a company and take on those complex mysteries of the brain to make lives better for those that are suffering from neurological disorders, and also those family members that kind of walk right alongside those folks that are dealing with those challenges. In terms of values, this is I think a point that I think is really important in terms of kind of what makes our company tick. I think in a lot of cases, when you go to a pharmaceutical company's website and you take a look at their values, they're these big power words, you know, innovation, collaboration. I mean, we're kind of simple and very direct in our approach. We want to do things like the right thing. Always do the right thing. When confronted with challenges, and whether they're business challenges, decisions that we need to make about our pipeline and developing products, it's always nice to be able to fall back on something as simple as always do the right thing. Another thing that we pride ourselves on as a company is being fully engaged. Our leadership will walk around and talk about being where you are. If we're here today, let's have our team fully engaged and present, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally. It's really important for us to really focus and be where we are. The last example that I would call out is inspiring happiness. And it's really a nice lead into our overall company purpose, where we genuinely believe there's much more to life when you connect health with happiness. I think there's probably a number of people on the call today, here today during this presentation and over the next couple of days that can probably relate to this. There is more to life when we can go ahead and connect health with happiness, and those two things, linking those two things together. So it talked a little bit about our company and how we feel we're a little bit different than maybe some of the large pharma companies out there, some of the companies you may be used to interacting with. Heck, and I worked at those companies. Trish worked with me at one of those companies in J&J. We think there's an opportunity for us to really be different in our approach when it comes to approaching epilepsy stakeholders. And we recognize that there needs to be a commitment, a strategic discipline, not only in what we say, but what we do. Again, in the spirit of being where we are, we need to be disciplined, not only in what we say, but what we do. And the commitment that you can expect from SK Life Science is the fact that we're going to be bold and different. We are going to be memorable. When we come up with a campaign, when we show up at a meeting, we don't want to do things the way they've been done before, just because they've been done that way before. We want to really identify best practices. We want to do things that have worked well in the past and do things different altogether. So one of the things that you can count on from SK Life Science is that we're going to be bold and different or memorable. We're also going to bring consistent value. We need to bring consistent value. Epilepsy stakeholders, whether patients, caregivers, family members, deserve being delivered, getting consistent value delivered to them. And probably most importantly, and Trish touched on this early on, we're never going to lose sight of why we come to work, and you can count on that from us. And it's very, very simple. We come to work every single day because we genuinely believe that we can impact the lives of patients in a very, very positive way. So why don't I go ahead and give you a couple of examples of how we're bold and different. We're going to bring consistent value, and we're going to never lose sight of why we come to work, that being patients. So I think these are a couple of examples of how we have shown up in the epilepsy marketplace a little bit differently than maybe your standard pharma company. I've touched on the values. What you see here on the left-hand side of the screen are our values listed out, our corporate website, where we talk about making a difference in the world of CNS. Actually, in the middle here, this is something that definitely I think reinforces how different we are. This is actually an ad out of a program book at the American Epilepsy Society meeting for a couple of years back. And literally, instead of putting something that says SK LifeScience, something that might talk about or show pictures of someone flying kites and talking about developing products that are going to allow you to take a nice walk in the park. What we did is we basically put something out there that said this. We didn't develop an ad for this program book because we didn't have the time. We're too busy focused on the important things, pursuing our passion, which is to unlock the mysteries of the brain so that we can go ahead and help to improve people's lives. And then the third example of being bold and different is our disease state education campaign that you see here on the right. This is www.epilepsycaptives.com. And basically, before we brought our product to market, before XCOPRI came to market, we felt like based on the research that challenging the epilepsy market to say, hey, there's patients that are continuing to have seizures. And it's not just that real refractory group of patients. It's not just that real difficult to treat group. Based on CDC data, close to 55% of patients in the US today with epilepsy are continuing to have seizures. So we went out with a very, very bold campaign to make the healthcare professionals that we're working with directly, whether they're neurologists, epileptologists, nurse practitioners, PAs, nurses, that we were representing for the patients and the caregivers that are continuing to have seizures. It could be 1 or 2 a month. It's not just those patients that are having 12, 15, 50 seizures a month. Everyone counts, and we want to make sure that everyone is looked after, and that's consistent with why we came out with that particular campaign. So those are some examples of us being bold and different. How about bringing consistent value? I think this is value.
Oop, Jeff, you're frozen. Oh, we just lost him.
Trish, am I back?
You're back. Okay, I was just going to say.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened. So hopefully we'll pick back up. So I froze kind of on consistent value, I presume. And as I was saying, I think it starts here in terms of bringing value with the product itself. XCOPRI was studied in a very difficult to treat group of refractory patients with partial onset seizures, and the results are pretty dramatic. And that programs where SK LifeScience has gone in as a lead sponsor to show support for epileptologists, general neurologists, and advanced practice providers as well. Trish, you still there? Is everything through? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
And then another example would be what we're doing with nurse practitioners and PAs, working with partnering with the American Epilepsy Society to make sure that as neurology and epilepsy changes, evolves over time, the role of nurse practitioners and PAs is becoming bigger and bigger over time. So we've partnered with them to make sure that the APP community has a voice at the table at the American Epilepsy Society as an example. So we're trying to do things differently. These were opportunities that we saw that we could go in and partner with JKIF and Penry, the Epilepsy Mini Fellow Network. Actually, Martin has been a really, really good partner to us. And we genuinely believe that whether we're talking about fellows or residents or APPs, we're making a difference. And then in terms of patients, and this is a very busy slide, but just wanted to show some examples of what we're doing. And again, this is to make sure that we're providing great service to patients and caregivers. Our STEPS discussion tool to drive a better dialogue between patients and caregivers and their physicians. Partnering with the Epilepsy Foundation and Uber rideshare partnership. Obviously, driving is such a major issue for so many patients and caregivers with epilepsy. So we came up with a very, very strong partnership, with the Epilepsy Foundation and Uber. Epilepsy advocacy partnerships. Here's where you see Epilepsy Awareness Day at Disneyland. Why we're all gathered here today. One of the many partnerships that we have. Again, why? Because we need to put patients and caregivers and families at the center of our overall mission. So in 2020, a little bit earlier this year, we did go ahead and launch XCOPRI. And it's a product that we're very excited about. It was a difficult decision. Obviously, COVID is something that we're all dealing with as we sit here virtually today, doing this as opposed to being together in person. And we made the decision in May to go ahead and launch the product. We didn't have to think too long about it either, because we know that there's a significant unmet need for partial onset seizures, and we wanted to make sure that we made the product available to as many patients as we could. We did at the same time, though, go out with more of a targeted launch. We didn't want to go very broad with the launch back in May, because there were other things that were front of mind. I mean, COVID and making sure that we didn't come across as a company that was here to drive our own agenda. We wanted to bring the product to physicians and other HCPs in a very responsible manner. So that's what we've done. And now what we're doing is we're going a little bit more broad with the launch of XCOPRI. And one of the main reasons is based on the early response that we've seen in the number of prescriptions that have been generated, and more importantly, the number of lives that we're already beginning to impact. So what I wanted to share is I just wanted to go ahead and share our campaign with you. This is our patient campaign. And again, our goal as a company is to really change the way pharmaceutical companies interact with patients and caregivers. We do believe that zero seizures is a possibility. And I'll go ahead and share some information in terms of why we believe that as we continue to move through the slides. But if you're someone that is suffering from epilepsy, obviously you are not alone. We know that there's close to 3 million people, or over 3 million people, adults in the US that are suffering from epilepsy. And the vast majority of those patients actually have partial onset seizures. So what we want to convey to everyone is that there's something, this is worth fighting for. There's no question about it. You're not alone, and come join a network of folks that have, share some similarities with you. Let's kind of create a movement, so to speak, with one another. And again, that's talking to the commitment of SK Life Science. So in terms of, real briefly, I'm not an MD. I'm pretty familiar with the XCOPRI clinical data, but I wanted to share some powerful seizure control results. XCOPRI is a product where you start low and you go slow with the product. It's titrated to an effective dose. And in our clinical trials, we studied the product with a 100 milligram arm, a 200 milligram arm, and a 400 milligram arm. And what we saw is that seizures were reduced by up to 55%. And this is a very, very refractory group of patients. So this was in the 400 and 200 milligram arm, just in the 18-week double-blind period. As patients actually moved into the maintenance phase, because you might look at this and say, is there a benefit of a 400 milligram dose over a 200 milligram dose? When you looked at the maintenance phase, where patients were actually able to get to an effective dose and stay there, we did see separation in these numbers between the 400 and the 200 group, where close to 2/3 of the patients in the 400 milligram group saw greater than a 50% reduction in their seizures. But some of the most interesting data that we saw were the zero seizure rates, the seizure freedom rates, where in the 400 milligram arm, as an example, 21% of patients actually got to a 100% reduction. That compares to 1% in the standard of care or the placebo arm. So you have that delta of 20%. We have no competitive data versus, no competitive head-to-head data to share in terms of how does XCOPRI perform against other epilepsy medications. But we're very, very proud of being able to reproduce a delta of 20% between our active arm and our placebo arm in the pivotal trials that were utilized by the FDA to actually get the product approved. So while we're excited about what XCOPRI can do for many patients out there, it's important to point out it's not the panacea, right? We don't have the cure here. And I think that everyone who's joining us today probably understands the challenges of epilepsy medications, of living with partial onset seizures. It's an exciting product. We're very excited about where things are going at this point in time with the product. But again, what should you expect? There's common side effects. These are the CNS side effects that you would expect to see from a centrally acting AED, like cenobamate, like XCOPRI. Some of the more common ones are the sleepy and tiredness, dizziness, a headache. Some double vision has been reported as well. So these are things based on what we've been told by our epilepsy council and the physicians that we work closely with, that these are pretty common side effects for AEDs. In terms of taking the product, it's a once-a-day product with or without food, and it's an oral medication. And one of the things that we really want to make sure that we're doing, and again, this goes back to some of the non-branded, non-product specific work that we've done, doing a very, very large survey, the STEPS survey that we did last year, where we're trying to really understand what the dialogue looks like between physicians and their patients and caregivers. And when we went out and we did this very, very large survey about a year ago, we launched it during Epilepsy Awareness Month last year, we found out that there's this fundamental disconnect. Physicians believe that they're communicating one thing to patients, and patients believe they're communicating something totally different to their physician or their nurse practitioner or their physician assistant. So one of the things that we did is we went ahead and created a STEPS discussion guide. This is really a dialogue tool that's available on our website. It's available in both English and Spanish, and the goal is to kind of populate this STEPS discussion guide. What does STEPS stand for? Seizure activity. What does your seizure activity look like? How is your treatment going? What's the emotional impact to you? What are your personal goals? And then safety, to really try to drive a better dialogue, create that common narrative, because we know how busy physicians are and patients are. And to get together, if there's 10 minutes of time together, let's try to maximize that dialogue as best we possibly can. So we're really, really pushing to make sure that when you get the opportunity to interact, that interaction is as positive and as productive as possible. So the STEPS discussion guide, the STEPS tool, is a way to really try to drive a better dialogue. So what are we really asking? We're asking patients to really join the fight along with us, to go ahead and to step up, come out to XCOPRI.com to learn more. It's about joining in the fight, because in our minds and based on what we've seen, we believe that zero is a possibility, but it's got to be something that we fight for together. And then in terms of some of the safety information, we just went ahead and included it here on XCOPRI. Again, it's not the panacea. But there's no black box warnings for the product. Again, very similar side effects from what you would generally expect from a CNS agent. And then I went ahead here on the last slide and included some resources. These resources include our corporate website at www.sklifescienceinc.com. I already mentioned our disease state education campaign. Another thing that we're doing, and I encourage you to take a look at, is we are providing free product for eligible patients, up to 6 months for commercial patients and 3 months for Medicare, Medicaid, uninsured patients. This is something, it's kind of our belief, again, in terms of doing the right thing. I'll go back to corporate value number 5. If a physician believes that XCOPRI is right for a certain patient, we want to do everything that we can, everything within our power to make the product available. You can find more information at our Navigator program there. And then obviously, physicians can go to our XCOPRI HCP, and patients, where do you join the fight? You join the fight at XCOPRI.com. And this is just a quick glimpse at our corporate campaign. And this speaks volumes. I mean, we're a company committed to literally working around the clock. We've got we're a subsidiary of BP. They're 13 hours ahead of us over outside of Seoul. We're based in New Jersey, and we literally will continue to work around the clock. And we will not rest until we have made an impact within the epilepsy community. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop. And Trish, I think we might add some questions that came along the way. So we'll open it up if that makes sense.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff, so much for that wonderful information. Please, so anybody who's attending in the room, please feel free to unmute and ask Jeff any questions, or you can put them in the chat box and I will read them out for the group as well. We did have a nice comment here, Jeff, in the chat box that this is wonderful information and they're going to post all the resources and happy to have SK LifeScience supporting them. And also Todd mentioned that he was new in the admin for his group and wanted to share this. And he was so happy he was able to get in here and join us today as well.
Great. Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know if anyone has any other questions or want to go ahead and might want to put them in the chat. Honestly, as a company, I kind of started by saying we're humbled to kind of be a part of an event like this. It takes a long time to get a product to market. And again, I think what we're trying to do is we're just trying to literally kind of elevate the entire community and playing our part in elevating the entire community to strive for something, striving for greatness, in this case, striving for zero. We know that based on the clinical trial results, it looks like about 1 in 5 people actually get there. But again, those are clinical trials with pretty strict inclusion-exclusion criteria. And you know, we'll continue to work with our medical team to try to bring publications and more information, not only the support for the patients, but the data to go ahead and back up why we've got so much excitement about the potential to change lives with XCOPRI.
Hi, this is Diana. I have a question. Did you find in your research whether it worked best alone or with other seizure medication? Is there a particular medication that it worked better with?
No, it's a great question, Diana. So in terms of the trial design, I'll start with the trial design as all of these products are studied, very refractory group. So we were added on to kind of the standard of care. It's interesting. We understand as epilepsy people that it's not an active arm and a placebo arm. The placebo arm is actually the standard of care, and it could be 2-3 medications that XCOPRI was added on to. So we went ahead and we added XCOPRI to a number of the more common products that you would expect, levetiracetam as an example, lamotrigine, lacosamide, I mean, to name a few. And what we saw is that we didn't see a significant difference based on what our medical folks have been able to do in mining the data to this point in time between any specific products. I'd say the most commonly used concomitant med in the trials, though, overall with cenobamate was levetiracetam. So, you know, that's the most common product, probably not a surprise just based on its, you know, prevalence in this community, in this patient population. So the results that were posted were pretty similar across other concomitant AEDs in general.
We do have a question in the chat box here, Jeff, from Brian. Which has been more difficult so far with COVID? The patients getting the new product information or the doctors being able to meet with company representatives?
Great question. Great question. Well, it's interesting. This is something that we're doing our best to work through. And really the challenge for us at this point in time, again, because, and this is why we were very careful and very strategic in our approach to the launch. We need to go to the healthcare professionals first, right? And we need to make sure that the HCPs are up to speed with the latest and greatest information on the product. And that in itself has been very, very challenging. The great news is when we get to the HCPs, the impact that we make with the patients, it's been very, very positive. So we've not been able to get to all of our targets. Put it into perspective, we've probably gotten to 30% of the targets. We've got about 100 epilepsy patient advocates across the country. We've probably been able to get to about 30% of our targets. But when we've gotten there and we take a look at the percentage of add-on, AD add-on therapy, the market share as we refer to it in the pharmaceutical world, we actually, when people have written XCOPRI compared to products like Vimpat, Aptium, the Briviact as an example, Fycompa, we're getting a very big share of those add-on type situations for partial onset seizures. So we're very, very encouraged. And then once we get those prescriptions to the patients, the product can get to the patients, then we can provide a bunch of this support information, some that I've shared today. So that once the physicians write the prescription, we definitely don't have much problems at all. We don't have much of a problem at all getting the product to the patient. So it's a matter of us just making an impact with the HCPs, and that's something that we're real committed to doing here.
Okay. See anything else in question-wise in the chat box? Oh, and does anybody else have any other questions? They can feel free to unmute and ask Jeff a question. We're all here to help and support. Don't be shy. Oh, we do have one that just came in, Jeff, from Sid. What is the length of time to get to a level 1 started?
So I think the question had to do with blood levels and efficacy. Is that what it was, Trish?
Correct. Yep. What is the length of time to get to a level 1 started XCOPRI?
So what I'd say is every patient is different, right? And you know, I think that in terms of what our FDA approved dosing looks like, we start patients at 12.5 milligrams for 2 weeks. We then titrate them to 25 milligrams. And then they move forward to 50 and 100. What I would say is that it's interesting when you go ahead and you take a look at our pivotal trials and you take a look at statistical significance you actually do start to see statistical significance at 100 milligrams. So we're anecdotally hearing about physicians that are utilizing the product in combination with other AEDs, and they're starting to see results earlier than we had anticipated. But then if we have the discipline to look back at our pivotal trials, we should recall that even at 100 milligrams, there's statistical significance. So, you know, could be within 6 weeks, within 8 weeks. And, you know, it's a real objection that we face day in and day out. And what we do is we remind the field that these patients on average have had partial onset seizures and epilepsy for over 2 decades. They're averaging 9 to 10 seizures a month. So, you know what, if it's going to take 4, 6, or 8 weeks to go ahead and start to potentially make a difference in their lives, we believe it's well worth the wait, and we're going to go ahead and support those patients and those physicians as best we possibly can, not only to the point where the product begins to work, but thereafter as well.
Okay, thank you.
This is, oh, I'm sorry, this is Diana again. As far as, you know, cognitively, you know, a lot of medication, of course, they have like memory problems or concentration problems. And I know, I'm sure this probably has the same kind of issues, but have you seen anything comparable, like to other medication? Is it less or more, or what is your comment on whether you've seen like memory problems?
Sure.
As far as your medication?
Sure. I mean, I think what I would do is I would refer you to the package insert for kind of what the actual information is from the clinical trials. What I'd say is, in terms of those clinical trials, in order to go ahead and study the product in a manner similar to how other AEDs have been studied and what the FDA requested, there was not the ability to actually lower the concomitant meds. So we believe that, again, more products on board, CNS acting drugs, that will have an impact on those numbers. Obviously, in the real world, physicians have the ability to go ahead and to adjust other meds. We talk about starting low, going slow, and adjusting the concomitant meds as you go ahead and you start to see efficacy. But again, I think our advisors have come back and said, specific to cognition, comparable to what we would have expected. Again, Trish and I started this call by talking about our days at J&J, and topiramate, Topamax, was a product that really kind of was called out at higher doses for cognitive challenges. We've not faced those same objections. We've heard more of a comparable to other sodium channel blocker type medications. But again, Diana, I would refer you definitely to the package insert. And at the same time, we could always get more medical information specific to that question related to cognitive side effects. But hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We'll give it another minute here and see if anybody else has any other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have another question. So you said it's comparable to a sodium channel medication. What are other sodium channel medications out there?
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is that's the feedback that we've gotten from our advisors. Okay, something that you would see. So there's a number of sodium channel blockers. Lacosamide is the one that probably jumps out. Vimpat could be a good example of a sodium channel blocking agent. The mechanism of action of all these drugs are not completely, in terms of understanding, does the mechanism really impact the outcome from an efficacy, from a side effect profile perspective. There's a number of people that are a lot more schooled on MOA and AEDs in general from a clinical and medical perspective, but a sodium channel blocking agent example would be Vimpat. I think, Diana, but it is worth noting, again, we don't have any comparative data to any of these products. What we have is our own clinical trial experience, and that's what's being reported in our prescribing information that you can find on our product website. All right, Trish, I think maybe we're in a good spot. So what I'll do is I'll just say, hey, thanks again for allowing us to be a part of these 2 days. What you can count on, we talked about some of the other things you can count on from SK Life Science. You can count on us being a part of this and like programs moving forward, because again, literally we're going to put the patients at the center of everything that we do. So really appreciate the opportunity to introduce the company, introduce the product, and spend 30 or 40 minutes with you this morning.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you for everybody who attended. If you have any questions, please reach out to your physician or reach out on the XCOPRI HCP website or XCOPRI, www.xcopri.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you.